Hi everyone and welcome to another gear review, this time with the Panasonic Lumix GX80 or GX85. I actually can't show it to you right now because this is currently filming. So let's get started. So first things first, the camera is currently set to autofocus continuous using the Lumix 25mm 1.7 lens, which is at the widest aperture, so you can really see how it's tracking. Hopefully it will track my face correctly. I haven't done any testing before, so I will be really interested how the results turn out. Unfortunately, the camera doesn't have a mic input, so what you will hear now is actually the audio which is recorded by the internal microphone from the camera. I hope that it's still good quality, I'm not sure, I really hope so. So yeah. That's the basic stuff, how it's set right now. So let's take a look at some of the specifications and what the camera is able to do. The overall handling of the camera is actually pretty nice. It has a lot of custom function buttons, it has two individual wheels. At the back wheel you can press to switch exposure compensation. And you have a touchscreen, of course, which is really nice and something I was always missing on my Sony A7 series. And it's really nice, you can set with touch to focus the focus points pretty easily. Even if you're using the viewfinder, you can use the touchscreen to quickly change your focus point by dragging on the touchscreen, which works really nice. I really like this. Otherwise, yeah, it's pretty small. I mean, it's a micro four thirds sensor, so the body hasn't been that big, which is pretty nice and was one of the reasons I chose the GX80. And yeah, it feels very nice in the hand and it's quite easy to operate. The camera is packed with quite a lot of interesting features. I will just name a few of these because there are probably much more and I haven't found out all yet. One that's really advertised by Panasonic as well is the post-focus function, where the camera actually records 4K 30fps video in different aspect ratios. You can actually choose them. And then you have the ability to focus later by basically it will just switch inside the video to find the correct frame, and then you can extract this as a still, which is unfortunately only JPEG and only 8 megapixels because it is 4K. You can also do focus stacking internal inside the camera, which is really amazing. However, I have just tried it a little bit with hand holding and it doesn't seem to work so well. I would rather recommend, if you are looking for like macro photography where you really need this, I would take a look at the focus bracketing feature, which is also really nice and has quite a lot of options to set. And especially since you get the full raw images, you get the full sensor size, and you can tweak them, the images later, and stack them manually in Photoshop. Of course, this is a little bit more work to do, but I think if you're looking for serious results, I would go this way. Another pretty cool feature is the 4K photo function, which is again like the post focus. It's capturing a 4K video, 30 fps, and you can choose the aspect ratio. I have tried it with my dogs and I wasn't that impressed because mainly the focusing seems to not keep up quite as well. Most of the time I didn't have any usable frames inside the video because as soon as I pressed the shutter it was already out of focus, and I also tried the capture first and then press, and the camera will take the second before the shutter was pressed and the second afterwards, which is really nice, but again the focusing is quite difficult and it's not keeping up when the subject is moving in that time really well. So yeah, I'm not that impressed with this feature, and again you also just have JPEG of course, and it's 8 megapixel files. Something that I was really impressed with is the autofocus, especially for a mirrorless camera. I'm used to my Sony A7 and especially the A7Rii, which I also use for filming and so on and doing some photography stuff. Of course this is not an action camera at all, but if you compare just the price of these two bodies, I was really impressed how the Lumix handled focusing. I tried some shots with the 45 to 150 millimeter lens, which is also a pretty cheap lens, and it kept up quite well. I get quite a few keeper shots when I'm shooting my dogs. I was quite pleased with the results here, really happy with that. For sensor stabilization, I just compared the camera to my Sony A7Rii. Which I did is I mounted the 25mm lens, which is also filming right now on the Lumix, and the 55mm size lens for Sony, which is almost equivalent in terms of the focal distance then, because this is a 2 times crop, also a little bit more, because in 4K it's cropping a bit further than just 2 times on the Lumix. And I used the full frame mode on the Sony to keep it as fair as possible. So what's interesting, both of these lenses don't have any optical stabilization, but both cameras offer a stabilized sensor, and the Lumix also offers electronic stabilization in 4K, which is really great. So here you see side by side the cameras. I hold them together and just sync the video, so you can see. And what my personal opinion is that the Lumix is even a little bit better. Maybe it's because also because this electronic stabilization kicks in a little bit. I don't know, but the results are really amazing, especially at that price point. When it comes to the actual image quality, it's a bit of a mixed experience, I would say. I mean, it's a relatively small sensor if you're used to full frame or APS-C. However, the results are quite sharp and look pretty good, especially if you got good lighting. Since this camera doesn't have an AA filter, it means you are able to get some more sharp results than with an AA filter, at least in theory, and if you got the right lenses. But what I found out is that even the cheap Panasonic lenses, which doesn't cost the earth, like the 25mm, like I said, which is filming, I mean, it's like 100 to 150 euros. It's quite affordable. If you just compare it to let's say the Sony size, which I also own, which is also 55mm, which is roughly the equivalent, you pay like, I think, 800 to 900 euros for basically the same lens. Of course, it's of different quality, especially if you compare it for stills images and keep the resolution of the actual full frame sensor in mind. But still, I think for the money you pay, you get quite pleasant image results, and they look really sharp, and noise starts to kick in, like with ISO 800 to 1600. This is basically where I try to cap my ISO, because otherwise if you go higher with the ISO in stills, it's not that pleasing. And since you just have only 60 megapixels, of course, still a lot of resolution, but if you compare it to, like, let's say the Sony A6000 series, which already have 24 megapixels, you don't have that much ability to scale the image down to reduce noise or to crop in a little bit. So you have to keep that in mind. Still, the image quality is nothing to be afraid of. It's quite nice and the results are quite pleasing, and I really also like the colors the Lumix produces. Well, yeah, so far I'm really happy with the camera. The menu system is quite nice, and if you ever use the Sony, you will fall in love with the menu system the first time you will use it. I'm really comfortable using it, and on my Sony I'm still looking for some options after having it for more than a year now, and this Lumix I have for maybe 1 or 2 weeks, and I find most of the options quicker on the Lumix already, which is a little bit which is a little bit strange actually. And yeah, otherwise the video quality is also quite nice, hopefully, as you will see right now. The autofocus in video is not as good as on the Sony, I would say. It's usable for like YouTube stuff, like I'm doing right now. For professional work, where you really have to look that you keep the subject in focus, I would rather use manual focusing. Of course, you have focus peaking and so on, so it's not that bad to use it. Yeah, so for this purpose I won't rely on the autofocus in video. Otherwise, it's quite a nice camera. Like most people also already mentioned, you don't have a mic input, which is a bummer if you're shooting a lot of video. I use it mainly as a B camera, so I'm not having much trouble with this. And yeah, otherwise it's working quite well, and I'm quite happy with the camera so far, and I can really recommend this camera to anyone who wants to go into photography and video shooting as well, or who wants a lightweight package. And keep in mind that most of the time when you're buying a body, you're also buying into a lens system, and so far if you're looking for really serious mirrorless lenses, I have to admit that most of the Sony lenses are quite expensive in comparison to at least some of the Panasonic lenses. You have the choice at least. In the Sony world there are not that much lenses, especially just for APS-C. You've got the crop factor you have to count into and so on. So I would really recommend you, if you're going to buy into the system, take a look at the lenses as well and check out what your main type of shooting is. And then you can find out which camera or which camera system will fit best for you. For me, I think it's the best of two worlds, because the Lumix is relatively small, it's not that expensive, I can take it anywhere I go, and I use the Sony for, like, yeah, let's say a little bit more professional work if I'm somewhere and have to shoot yeah, for like a company or so. But otherwise the Lumix still performs very well, and like when you're looking for a quite and capable B camera, it's also a great option. And since you have the stabilized sensor, you can shoot most of your stuff quite handheld, and you get quite nice results. Yeah, that's that for this video. I really hope it will look good, and yeah, if you also own the GX80, I would also like to hear your feedback, how you like the camera. And otherwise, yeah, I hope to give you some ideas how the camera works and what the results are. And I hope to see you in some of the next videos. Bye.